All right. Hey, everybody. We are now live with our town hall for Camp Summer Institute. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start with introductions. Audrey, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'll go first. Hello, everyone. My name is Audrey Stanley. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a deputy field organizer for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I attend Texas Women's University as a biology major, and I'm super excited to be here today. And I'll pass it
Hey,
back to
y'all.
Ray.
Okay. Hey. Hey, y'all. My name is Ray Martinez. I'm the Texas Rising Director for the Texas Freedom Network, and we're super excited to welcome everybody into this town hall today. I do want to take one quick, 1 second to just recognize overnight quite a few things happened across the state of Texas. I know that there's a hurricane happening in the Rio Grande Valley right now, as well as a shooting of a protester at a Black Lives Matter protest that happened in Austin last night. I want to hold space for that and recognize that a couple of tragedies have happened across the state of Texas. I do want to say to folks on this call that Texas Rising is here to support you all and anybody who's joining our session and anybody who's a part of our family. Please stay safe out there, y'all, and let us know if there's any way that we can support you in this time. And I also want to say that, this is also why organizing in Texas is so important, right? We know that our communities deserve better. And some of these folks on this call work to make our communities better at the Texas State Legislature, but organizing is so important. And I'm happy that everybody is a part of this training so that we can take that back and make Texas better. Thank you guys for joining this town hall. We are joined by House District representatives who are running for re-election in their House districts. These are folks that are currently in office, and we'd love to stay in office. Really important races to watch in November. So we have Representative Rhetta Bowers from Dallas on the call, Representative Ana Maria Ramos on the call from Dallas as well, Representative Erin Zwiener from Hays County, and Representative Jon Rosenthal for Houston. So I'm going to kick it over to Audrey. Thank you guys for joining the panel so very much. We're delighted to have you here and thankful for the time that you took out of your schedules to join us. I'm going to kick it over to Audrey to hop into the first question.
Okay. So what I wanted to do is just give each representative a chance, like 1 minute, to just introduce yourselves so people can know who you are. Representative Rhetta Bowers, would you like to start first?
I will. Good afternoon, everyone. And first, I want to say to Texas Rising, thank you for having us out, and thank you for pulling together, I'm sure, what is going to be one of the best panels of this Summer Institute. And I will say for my colleagues, we all are delighted to be here. I'm Texas State Representative Rhetta Andrews Bowers from House District 113 in Far East Dallas County. And just glad to be here today. Who goes next, Audrey?
Anyone can go next. We'll just allow y'all to just go ahead and go.
I'll go. Thank you, Audrey. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Texas Freedom Network. Anyway, thank you for allowing us to join you tonight, Texas Freedom. I just woke up, guys. I'm sorry, but I just want to say thank you. I'm Ana Maria Ramos from North Dallas, Richardson, Addison, and Garland. So it's North Dallas and 3 surrounding suburbs. And I want to let the viewers know, and thank you to the individuals who are watching today. It's really important that we all learn from each other, right? So that we can stop things like what happened last night and really give a voice to everyone who is part of the Black Lives Matter March, and really everyone who is joining this conversation today, because there's a lot of change that needs to happen. We all know that. And I want to let everybody know you have 4 out of 150 state representatives. So in the state of Texas, I'm also a teacher. But in the state of Texas, we have 150 state representatives. So you have 4 voices that sit on that floor with you today. And so we are all looking forward to learning from you all as well and discover ways and explore further ways that we can better our state. So I'm awake now. Thank you.
I was going to defer to Erin. Erin, you want to go next? I think we just lost Representative Zwiener.
That means you have to go.
That means I have to go. So I'm sure she'll log back on, and hopefully this connection stays stable enough. If I have to drop out and drop back on, I'll do that. I'm Jon Rosenthal, and I'm the state representative for House District 135. So I represent a portion of Northwest Houston. So Harris County, Houston, Texas, and I'm looking out the window because we've got some massive thunderstorms rolling in right now. So I'll apologize in advance if I end up blanking out and having to come back in. But I want to thank you all for having me here today. I'm super excited to be on this panel with some amazing troublemakers. So we, when we lost our great American icon, John Lewis, who said, "Make good trouble." These ladies right here, they make good trouble. These are the cream of the crop from our freshman class. So I'm really glad to be with y'all. I'm a first-time rep who never even ran for office before. I'm a mechanical engineer from the oil and gas industry, and I ran for office for the very first time in my life in 2018, and I defeated a 24-year incumbent, one of the senior members of the House on the GOP side, to be here. So that is hopefully the trend that we're wanting to carry into this next election, preserving these seats and then winning the extra ones that we need to have a majority in the Texas House. So thanks again for having me here. Erin, I'm dying to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you all for having me here. I'm sorry I blinked away for a second. The exit the room button for this platform is in the same place as the unmute button on Zoom. So I just clicked the wrong button. But I represent Hays and Blanco counties in the Texas House. That's an area just southwest of Austin, a lot of suburbs, but also has Texas State University down in San Marcos. And it also has some rural areas. And I really enjoy getting to represent such a district with such a breadth of experiences, especially because it lets me have some fun communications to folks that we would like to pull our direction over time. What all of us have in common on this panel today is we all flipped seats. We all worked our tails off to get here. And, one thing I have noticed is certainly those of us who had to fight, and, in the case of Representative Bowers, fight more than one election cycle to get in the building. We don't want to waste that opportunity. We want to get in there and really do the work. And, I think it's really critical that we get more friends that are scrappy fighters like us. None of us in my district until I won my race. And the reason I mention that is we can't take any of these races for granted across the state of Texas, and we've got to fight for all of them. And I really want to encourage all y'all to get involved wherever you live. There is a district that could use your help. And I know that in my race, the reason we were successful, the reason we were able to sneak up on them was on the ground organization.
I think we just lost Representative Zwiener. So we'll give her some time to hop on. But in that time, thank you guys for doing all of your introductions. Super appreciate it. We're going to go into the first question. And that is, when entering this position, what are the things that you like most of, when you first entered this position, what were the things that you liked most about being a legislator, and kind of the things that you liked least about being a legislator? Rep Ramos, would you like to go first?
Sure. What I liked most about being a representative is bringing it to the people. I'm really active in our district, our constituents. We're like family. We were so connected during the campaign because like Representative Zwiener had mentioned, it was very scrappy, I've worked in the community for over 20 years. So I was creative. We just did things, stretched a penny like nobody's business. And so we were very creative and building the community. I was able to bring them with me to the Texas House. So they advised me on voting. They suggested legislation. And I would come back to Dallas on the weekends and explain to them the process. And this is what I learned. And can you believe this jerk said that and all of this stuff, So giving them the background story and removing that Wizard of Oz curtain, bringing the house to the people. That's what I love the most. What I loved the least, or what I liked the least, is the politicians. And I say that tongue in cheek. I know I'm an elected official, but there was a lot of, for me, I felt things being said and then other things being done. And I don't roll like that. So it really bothered me. I'm very passionate about, saying what you're saying and doing it as well, following what you said you were going to do, whether it's, falling out at the end, but being true to your word. And so that kind of bothered me, but I'm not naive. I'm in a place of, politicians, but it just, that was what I liked the least. And, but you work through it and continue to fight for the people. So that's what you do.
Thank you. And if you all would like to popcorn, I don't know who wants to go next.
Are you popcorning? I'll take it. I'll take it. So it's what, the question again, Ray, is what we liked least and what we liked best, or vice versa. Well, for me, what I liked least about entering is still having to prove that I had the right to be there. As an African American and minority legislator that flipped a district, that the first African American woman to do so in House District 113, and some people knew me, some people didn't. Some people, as Anna Maria said, didn't know my years of service to the community. And as Representative Zwiener said, it took me, not 4 years and 2 election cycles. It took me 6 years. I was, as a field organizer for other candidates in a gubernatorial year, I was already toiling the soil. And so when I was elected, I was, ready to do the job, as my colleague said on this call. I mean, we came to the state capitol taking elected office seriously, doing our job and serving the people we were voted in to serve very seriously. And so sometimes early on, we would have these 10 or 15-minute meetings in our office. And here I was meeting people that were administrators, maybe in the district, or lobbyists. And I felt like I was still having to prove that, doggone it, I had a right to have a seat at the table and have my seat on the floor. I had some people come into constituents, as a matter of fact, come to the floor as we were voting and working very hard, call me off the floor to tell me that they just wanted to meet me. They didn't vote for me, but I just happened to be their rep, so they wanted to meet me. And all I could do was say, thank you for coming. Thank you. It is an honor to serve you, but I do have to go back in to continue the work that we're sent here to do. And that was tough. So that was some of the least of what I liked. Some of the best was truly being in awe of making history and continuing that on the floor, and knowing that what we were doing would truly affect generations. Like, it was not just this moment in time. That also coming off the campaign trail and marching for Black Lives way before it was popular, that we moved the needle. And so that I just want to say to you, you got to know that what you're doing now in every part of your journey really, really matters. So that's the least and the best for me. Thanks. I'm popcorning to Erin because I don't want to lose her.
And then my internet blinked. What the question's the best and the worst of being in the legislature? Did I catch that right? I kind of have to piggyback off Rhetta a little bit and say, yeah, that opportunity to impact real change. Sexual assault is an issue I care a lot about. I've personally been impacted. I have a lot of friends who have been impacted. And, I had a friend who was impacted in a pretty dramatic way, had law enforcement follow up on her case well and build a good case, and then had a prosecutor sit on the case for over a year until the individual who assaulted her was arrested for assaulting someone else in a different part of Texas. And it was something that didn't need to happen, but happened because a prosecutor sat on the case. And so I filed legislation designed to try and figure out some of the barriers to prosecutors moving forward on these cases. Maybe my most intense moment in the legislature was a volunteer from TASA, the Texas Association Against Sexual Assault, reading the letter my friend wrote for that bill. And just having that opportunity to make positive change. And I do want to say that though that particular bill didn't advance, I was able to work with Representative Donna Howard to get most of the language from it in the budget as a writer to the budget. So we will be getting some data on which offices are doing a really good job prosecuting sexual assault and which probably need some help. So I think that was my best moment. My worst moment, I guess, was an almost. It's one of the challenges of the legislature is that we were on a deadline. We're always on a deadline. There are these hard dates we have to get stuff by. And another piece of legislation I worked on was one that would have made every single person in Texas able to bring a sexual harassment claim against their employer. Right now, you can only bring a sexual harassment claim if they have 15 or more employees. And that was a piece of legislation I worked on with Senator Zaffarini. We got it out of committee unanimously in the House. Senator Zaffarini got it unanimously through the Senate. And then it finally got set for the very last calendar of the session. And it was on page, I think, 10 or 11 of 13 pages on the calendar, and we had a midnight deadline. And at midnight, we were 5 bills away from mine. And it was very hard to accept that we had lost something on a calendar. But that's kind of some of what this is about, is trying to build enough momentum that next session it's a high enough priority to get it on the calendar earlier and get it moved forward. So it usually takes multiple sessions to pass a bill, and we're going to keep working on this one until we get it done.
Okay, so I know politicians tend to be long-winded. I've actually got 2, and instead of saying the best and the worst, I'm going to say there were 2 things that really I found inspirational and uplifting, and two moments that I found particularly challenging, and those challenges I want to use for motivation to get back and do better next time. So the 2 uplifting parts were I'll be in line with my colleagues about, you go on the House floor and you feel that stuff in your chest from the day you get sworn in. It's impactful. And then as you work through this stuff, the constant motivation that what we're doing will affect people's lives hopefully in a positive way. And so working for positive change, getting to advocate for for constituents, for the people of Texas, getting to fight for what's right. It's an awesome privilege, really. Feel it in my chest every day, smacks you in the face. And then the other part of that is the part that the part I found inspiring that I never even knew was an integral part of this job is, when you get out of the session and you're back in the district and you're working in your office, there are opportunities to advocate directly with individual people and really fight for positive change for them and help them in numerous ways. So it's called constituent services. And when you start the work, you don't really know what that means. People talk about it like it's sort of run-of-the-mill, everyday stuff. But the truth is, these are the opportunities in real time to impact people's lives. And I could go on and on about about what that entails and what we've been able to do from the office, but everywhere from helping people file their unemployment claims to we advocated for a single mother bus driver in the school district who was trying to buy a house and running out of time on the period where the loan was approved, and able to get that to happen. And she moved out of subsidized housing and into a neighborhood in my district. So the looks on their faces when they close the deal and stuff, I mean, you really get that you made a difference in a person's life, and we get to do that every day. So that's easily the best part that I never knew about. And then the challenges, when it's the exact flip side of that. So when you're on the House floor and we're trying to advocate for what's right, some of those votes go down are heart-wrenching. When the stuff, it's hard not to swear, when the stuff goes down the House floor and it's a party line vote and it's clearly politics prevailing over what's good for the people of Texas, that breaks your damn heart. And some folks seem to think that that's funny, and that even breaks my heart even worse. So I'll say for the most part, our colleagues all take it seriously. Clearly some do not. And so that I found to be a huge challenge. And the other thing kind of along the same lines was petty stuff gets in the way of good legislation that's going to help people. And I had a bill in particular that was killed in a committee for reasons I really don't understand, although it's been rumored that it was because of who I defeated. So somebody holds a grudge against me because I won an election, that's fine, but don't let it get in the way of us helping the people you particularly have said you care about helping. So those were the two challenges. And I want to get back to forward the bill. I want to get back to the next time we do a vote on expanding Medicaid, we should have a Democratic majority in that House, and we will freaking vote to bring that money into Texas. I cannot say how passionate I am about that issue. So those were my two highs and two motivating, I'm not sure what the word is, moments.
Thank you all for that. Thank you guys for sharing what your highs and lows are of being, in office right now. I'm going to kick it over to Audrey to ask our second question.
Okay. So as a resident of the Southern Dallas community, I am directly affected by Shingle Mountain. For those of you who do not know what Shingle Mountain is, it is pretty much a mountain built of shingles. Shingles are what goes on what the roofs are predominantly made of. Right. And they're usually made of asphalt, which, if you don't know, can be incredibly toxic. Incredibly toxic. And I bring this out because it causes health issues with people who live around this area. And this is an example of how Black and Brown communities are affected by environmental racism. My question is, what are steps you think the legislature can take to make sure Black and Brown communities are not subjected to environmental inequality?
Audrey,
and
I'm sorry,
y'all can just popcorn it. Whoever wants to go first.
I'd like to
whoever wants to go first can go.
I'd like to talk about, thank you, Audrey. I think that's a wonderful question. I grew up in the southern sector as well. We just a couple of weeks ago, something that we do as legislators is, again, advocate for our people, right? So we have a similar issue going on in our community in Garland. They're wanting to expand a manufacturing plant that makes glue and wants to, I guess, it's almost quadruple the amount of particles they're putting out in the community through their manufacturing process. And we asked for this hearing. It was online. There were some residents on there, which was very impressive. But had we not had that hearing, TCEQ, the Texas Commission of Environmental Quality, would have given the green light to expand this manufacturing plant and introduce all of this additional particulate matter in the community, which is where Black and brown folk, we're breathing it in, white folk too, but we're breathing it in. And, the law in Texas right now, thanks to your Republicans, are the way you really police that. There's not enough inspectors to police all of these scrap yards and manufacturing plants and what they're doing to our community. So the idea is, and they said it on the call, is that drive by. And if you see anything that looks bad, then let the state know and they'll inspect it. That's not okay. And that's not acceptable. So breathe the air and report on that. Well, how does anybody know what the air? It's a slow kill, right? It's killing people slowly. So we are investigating that right now because I do plan to introduce legislation. Number one community hall a year later after they started this process is not good enough. Our people need to know, and we need to stop the acceptability of saying corporations and big business can dump trash in our backyard and say it's okay. If it's not acceptable in their neighborhood, why is it acceptable in ours? And I'm really passionate about this. I opened up a community college in West Dallas, the El Centro West Campus. And it took El Centro years to find good property that wasn't contaminated by lead, because West Dallas has been known to be a dumping ground for these, for environmental damage to the community. And people are still feeling the effects nowadays. So we can do a better job. We need to do a better job. The laws are written to take the power away from you and your neighbor and to make it easier for these corporations to skirt the issue and to make a buck off of you. And then at the same time, deny you the health care access that you need. So it is big money that's behind that, but we got the people, we got the power of the people. So we got to continue to organize, bring awareness, and really put pressure on our representatives. At the end of the day, we work for you, and waiting is not good enough when your grandmother was there and got sick, and your aunts and your cousins, and now you. I mean, waiting, how long do we have to wait, right? Put pressure on us, hold us accountable. Just because we're Democrats or, whatever doesn't mean anything. We got a job to do, and sometimes we're not doing it. So it's up to you to make us accountable as well.
I'll pick up there. Thank you, Representative Ramos. And I agree with you. I feel like I'm hearing loudly from our colleagues on the Texas Legislative Black Caucus that there were a lot of disproportionate things, and especially when it comes to healthcare and COVID. So right now, what is happening through the pandemic is light is being shed on all these disproportionate things that were out there already. We knew for a long time, as you said, in Black and brown communities, and for people of color, that we were not given the same in equality at all when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to education, when it comes to jobs, when it comes to advancement. We were on the lower part of the totem pole in what was extended to us. And so it just so happens that now a global pandemic sheds even more light on those things. And so we asked early on that demanding with a letter to Governor Abbott that my colleagues on the call and in the Zoom or Run the World Today signed on to. And we demanded that appropriate data was collected, especially when it came to COVID and the number of cases and the number of confirmed cases and deaths, because our communities were being affected at a greater rate. And I think, as Representative Ramos said, it is about making sure the data is collected so that those communities and populations that are most vulnerable get the resources they need. And that's the bottom line. We know that when you look at going back to school now, our communities and children don't have connectivity. We do not have devices. So, we do have the short end of the stick. So when those funds are, whether it's Medicaid expansion, when those funds are appropriated and allocated to the right places, we will do better. And so that's all I really have to say about it. It's hard for me, because I don't represent a community that largely looks like me. The one thing I consistently tell my colleagues, though, is that I am Black. So regardless of, I, of course, am going to keep my constituency top of mind, but there's a pocket of our community that is being underserved. And that is why I entered the room and why I have a seat at the table.
Thank to both my colleagues for those really thoughtful answers. I want to add a little bit just specific on this environmental side and how TCEQ works. Texas has a long pattern of operating under the federal minimums for all environmental protections. And we have seen the federal minimums get consistently eroded under the Trump administration. And then there was also previously quite a bit of erosion under the George W. Bush administration. So Texas has seen our environmental protections weaken. And the way the TCEQ permit process works, the only thing you can talk about in an air quality permit hearing is air quality. You can't talk about the other impacts on the community. You can't talk about noise. Dust is not considered air pollution. That is particulate, or that dust is not air pollution. It's just a nuisance, and TCEQ can't regulate that. One issue I've been working on in particular is aggregate mining, and aggregate processing. So that's like rock quarries, cement plants, concrete batch plants, and they have a whole host of impacts on a community other than just the technical air quality. But TCEQ can only look at the air quality aspect. Those plants are increasingly getting pushed out into sort of semi-suburban areas, which is also where our Black and Brown communities are getting pushed as gentrification happens. And so these communities end up right next door to really disruptive facilities. And then on top of that, TCEQ does their air quality permitting based on modeling. They say this type of facility should produce X amount of pollutants, and that meets our standards. But they don't have any way to say, oh, well, we have 10 of these facilities in 5 square miles. What is the cumulative effect on the community? They don't have any process to look at that. It's, does that individual facility meet our specifications? And then, as Representative Ramos mentioned, the money to inspect those facilities and keep up with them just hasn't really been there. And when someone is caught with a violation, they get a slap on the wrist. That is often less than the cost of them continuing to do business that way. And so I filed legislation last session to require that when TCEQ levied fines, that those fines be more than the company made from cutting corners. So we just have this culture of lack of enforcement, and we've made it really hard for localities to step up and do enforcement themselves. A lot of that power, like the AG has to agree, the Attorney General has to say, well, I'm not going to pursue that case before a local entity can. And it's made it incredibly difficult. So we need a lot of systemic change at Texas Commission on Environmental Quality to get them to serve the community. Actually, in my first hearing as a legislator, I sit on the Environmental Regulation Committee. I watched the executive director of TCEQ refer to the businesses as his customers. And we should not be treating, like, agencies should not treat the people they are charged with regulating as customers. The people they work for are the people of Texas, not individual businesses. So it's going to be a long haul to get that agency up and operating the way it should be. But I know my colleagues and I are in to do that work.
Wow, y'all. I don't know about everybody else on this call, but I am in awe of these lady legislators right here. Y'all are amazing, fierce, powerful, intelligent, well-spoken, and I'm just blown away. I'm not sure what I should say now. But on the topic of environmental racism, there's a couple of paths for us to take, and that's what I was thinking when the question was asked. And now, I feel like I'm enlightened by the conversation of these three ladies on this panel. But so there's one thing, like Ana Maria was saying, is that you can advocate directly with your representative and get work done that way. And we had something occur here right on the border of my district. So it wasn't actually in my district, but it's Jarvis Johnson's. And between him and Senator John Whitmire, they got a concrete batch plant they got the permit rescinded. And so the plant actually was unable to open. And the thing is that TCEQ giving these permits to these operators who then go and operate in areas that are predominantly underserved communities that typically they don't have a voice with us. So that's our job, is to voice for them and advocate for those communities. And I agree with Rep. Zwiener. Dust in the air is more than a nuisance. And we had the same issue. We had the same conversation with TCEQ in Energy Resources when they were talking about aggregate mining, and how they don't have to regulate dust if the particles are above a certain size. Well, it's more than just a nuisance. It can cause real health problems. And for some reason, these companies and the registration authorities, the agencies that let them operate, seem to have less heartache when they operate in poorer neighborhoods with people that have less of a voice. So the first thing that we can do is raise our voices together, work with your legislators and your senators and stuff to advocate for you. And then the second thing is to bring the damn legislation to regulate these companies in a little bit more specific way. So again, along the lines of what Rep. Zwiener was saying, there's no teeth in the law. And we have this situation set up between the Environmental Protection Agency on one side and the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality on the other side, where they point fingers at each other and they say, it's them that's supposed to be handling this. No, it's them that's supposed to be handling this. And nobody is getting in there to interrupt the cycle and stop these practices that are rotely unfair. So we need to give authority and funding to agencies like TCEQ, and then mandate that they are carrying out these kind of inspections and do their due diligence before they issue permits to operate. So I hope that adds a little bit. I still, I could just sit and watch y'all ladies talk. I mean, I'm so thrilled to be here with you. I'm so proud to be in this class.
Thank you so much. Those were all amazing answers. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and follow up with another question. My question is, do you feel defunding the police will be helpful? Where do you think funding should be redirected?
I'll go. I don't believe overall defunding the police is the way we have to go. We do need to, when you talk about defunding the police, it sounds like it totally means doing away with all those funds with the police. And I think that's where the misconceptions come in. I do believe that we have to look at allocating more money to mental health and to other social services. So truly defunding the police does mean that. That's really what it means. But I think there's a large group of people in our population that want to make out like defunding the police is this totally negative thing that says we're doing away with the police. And that is not at all what people are saying. I did, after the Black Lives Matter movement started to ease up a little bit here in our community in North Texas, I started to do a law enforcement listening series because I wanted to hear what those officers and police chiefs in particular and presidents of police associations had to say. So I started in on the law enforcement listening series and asking the hard questions on what is it that we could do to help you all, because we know public trust is gone. We know that communities of color, our community has no trust in police. Like we talked about de-escalation and really making sure that's where that training. I filed legislation during the 86th legislative session that dealt with training for peace officers. And those bills, as Representative Rosenthal said, some of those bills don't make it to committee. They do not make it to the floor, and they do not go anywhere. Even my brother-in-law, who's a police officer in Houston, said that's the last thing we need is more training. But I felt that when it dealt with community policing, them humanizing themselves to community, that it's definitely needed. That did come up in some of my listening series and parts of it. Parts of my takeaways also were the 8 Can't Wait. There's a series of things that police officers are doing, whether that's chokeholds and things like that, that agencies are really, really trying to make sure that they are stopping, especially in light of what happened to George Floyd and others. And we've got to demand that they don't have as much on them. So when it comes to the homeless, I also filed legislation to see about how they interact with the homeless. They said to me that they have to have somewhere to take these homeless individuals. So that is, they can interact with them. They certainly really can't pick them up and all of that. They're not supposed to do that because that's really not their job. And that's why when it comes to homelessness, when it comes to mental health services, we have to reallocate those funds. And so that is why I say with members of the legislature that I don't agree with totally defunding the police. Reallocating the funds, yes. And the other thing that I'll say lastly is that it cannot be a one size fits all. This is something that I really, really found out because I felt like at first looking at it, I felt like for sure having your knee on somebody's neck, that's totally crazy. That we definitely need to make a mandate, but it can't be a state mandate. It can't be one size fits all because what I found out even in House District 113, that my agencies are not one size. They're not all the same in number. Truly, they try to say that they do represent the diversity of their community. But by and large, we have to look, this has to be agency by agency, city by city when you look at policing. One of the other things that I ask these police chiefs is if they believe that police should live within the communities they serve. And they said no, because there is room for threat on their part. And this was the irony of those conversations was that, believe it or not, just like people in the Black community feel threatened, they feel threatened too. And I'm telling you, there were some really, really real takeaways from that listening series. I talked to the majority of police chiefs in my district, and thankfully in tandem, members of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus were starting to do town halls as well so we could hear from the community, because you can't be one-sided in this whole thing. You definitely have to hear the hearts and minds of the people you serve. But I wanted to hear from those law enforcement officers because, they do believe that they hold the keys and they are the law. They do believe they have control of society. And because of it, public trust is truly lost. So I do believe we should work hand in hand. Go ahead.
And I'd like to add, we got to step back and remember why we got to where we're at, right? And if you look at the 13th Amendment, the whole premise of the 13th Amendment is to really prohibit involuntary servitude except for punishment of a crime. So when you go back to the 13th Amendment, being Black, a freed slave, a Black person with no job, that was a crime. And so it's not like those people or that idea of bringing it into the system went away. It is very real and very part of our system, which is what's leading us to issues like what we have today with the Black Lives Matter. I think we should absolutely redirect funding from our police departments and bring more accountability and transparency to our police officers. I don't agree that chokeholds, or maybe not chokeholds, but some way you're treating one person in one way is okay in different communities. We need to hold them all accountable. What percentage of your police department is maybe not living in the community, but knows the community, right? Knows the values or the culture, right? If 90% of my police department is white and 90% of my community is of color, there are different nuances that living in a community in a diverse community, you have a different appreciation for the different nuances of the people. And unfortunately, we're not seeing that in our police officers. So if they're going to make an arrest, if they're going to do something, we need to hold them accountable. It needs to be an automatic thing where, okay, if I'm going to shoot this person, I need to be able to explain why I'm going to stop somebody with a stoplight and then, now they're in jail when you could have just given them a ticket. There's got to be more accountability. And fortunately, in our community, we have a task force. So we have people in our community. I'm very passionate, but again, I'm leaving it to the people in our community, in our task force. We have retired police officers, active police officers that are helping us design the legislation, because in our community, the bills are being created for and by the people. But in addition to that, and I'm very passionate about all of this, but what has made me most excited about bringing the awareness to the Black Lives Matter movement is how it has engaged our youth, and how they're having those real conversations and forcing the grown-ups in the room to be real about institutionalized racism, and how our young white youth are holding hands and embracing our young Black and brown youth and saying, you know, I heard one of my constituents' youth, because she can't even vote yet. She said, she was a young white lady, and she said, you know, I've seen how the Black skin, the brown skin is seen as a weapon from teachers and from, you know, police, but I could use mine as a tool to help use my privilege to help elevate and to be able to support my Black and brown brothers and sisters. And so to hear our young folk be so connected, and she could go to her room and not even bother with Black Lives Matter, but she's out there protesting just like thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids across America and the world. I'm excited. They're going to do so much better than we have done for them. They're going to bring that passion, that community, that commitment to each other. They're going to take us to a whole new level. And so Trump will go away, and these new leaders are going to like blow us out of the water with their collective goodness, I think, and community. So yeah, thank you. And I'll pass it to Erin.
Yeah, thanks. I want to give a quick shout out to all of our organizers in Hays County, especially those who worked with the city of San Marcos to get the first ever cite and release ordinance in Texas that's mandating that local police officers use the cite and release legislation when folks are arrested for cite and release eligible crimes. Every other city in the state that's done it, it's been a suggestion, and that suggestion had been in place for San Marcos and hadn't been fully acted upon. So I'm really proud of the city of San Marcos for taking that step, and I know that was largely a youth-driven effort. So congratulations, y'all, on that. I want to let y'all know about a couple logistical things related to this. One is the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement is going to be under sunset next legislative session. And what that means is we at the legislature will be cracking open the agency and talking about the pieces of it and what we can change. This is the agency that oversees the law enforcement agencies across the state of Texas. So I'm not going to feign being an expert on this issue. I really tend to defer to some of my colleagues who know better, but stay involved in the process next cycle, because there's going to be big opportunities. And then the other thing I want to emphasize is that it's really critical to work on this issue at the state level, at the local level. If you live in a city, your city is responsible for the police department. And then you also have the county sheriff's department, and what they do matters as well. So staying involved at every level is really critical for us to address this issue. And most of the questions in terms of funding and changing the way resources are allocated and whether or not they're going to law enforcement or social services, most of those decisions are made locally. So please stay engaged there and work to make change at every single level.
Awesome. So I don't actually, once again, don't need to say anything, but I can bring a perspective as the old white man in the room. This situation, this topic comes up time and time again. And in my lifetime, we see it over and over again. I vividly remember Rodney King being beat in Los Angeles. So this is the moment in history when we can make it happen. So besides getting into a debate about the semantics of what we call it, I think we can approach this in two different ways. First is just the humanitarian, what's the right damn thing to do for human beings? And second is the cost and the fiscal side of this. So I always use the example of the young man who fell asleep in his car in a Wendy's drive-through. You do not need armed officers, and they are not the ones who are trained to deal with these kind of situations. So if you could send trained social workers or whatnot, not only does that get resolved at lower cost and more effectively, but you save the life at the same time. So when we ask our police to operate as social workers, as family interventionists, we're asking them to do too much, and we end up with paying too much for a response that actually puts people's lives in jeopardy. So this is the time to do it. I believe we have a large coalition, including the T-Cole folks, who are going to be on board for this. This is the time to make it happen right freaking now. So thank you so much.
Thank you so very much, everybody. I know we didn't get a chance to get time in for Q&A with the chat, but please go ahead and follow up all of these folks. I know that there's office information if you Google everybody on this thing, so you can follow up with your folks' office if you'd like to, if you have any questions. I want to say thank you to all the panelists on in the session. Thank you for spending your time with us and sharing with us your answers to our questions. So really thankful, and I hope everyone has a good day. And thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.